Okay, I'll call the Finance Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 27th, and I'll call the meeting to order. First thing, on the approval of the agenda, I'd like to just amend item 11, which is next meeting, which add to it adjustment to budget timeline. Are there any other changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve agenda as amended.
Have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Approve the minutes from the January 23rd meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, or questions about the minutes from the January meeting?
I make a motion that we approve the January 23rd, 18 minutes.
Have a motion. Look for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like
Minutes
to
are-
say that, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
Minutes are approved.
Can we try to get our minutes after every meeting? Because it's really hard to go back 2 months to remember what we were doing at those meetings. So we don't have the February minutes and closed session minutes too. So I just want to remember that.
We could send out unapproved. Okay. Item 4, 2018-19 Superintendent's Draft Budget Recommendation. Mr. Covington, Dr. Houlihan. Dennis?
Today, we're going to bring forward to y'all just an overview of where we are in the budget process. We'll talk about the development of the budget, our trending from our state, local, and federal funding, our local property taxes, our number of students here in the county, and our assumptions, and then the superintendent's priorities. On the budget calendar, and I think this gets to Mr. Sy's amendment, we're at the March 27 timeline for review of the superintendent's budget. So we will go over that today. But down on the Board of Education timeline, we need to add a Finance Committee meeting on the 10th of April at 5 o'clock. That would be right before the superintendent's presentation to the board on his budget recommendation.
So the Finance Committee will get the recommendation first, but we have a 6 o'clock closed session. So is that going to be enough time to look? Are we going to get ahead of time to look at, or?
Yes, we'll send it out ahead of time.
You'll get it ahead of time, but at the April 10th meeting, the board will not be taking any action on the budget. It'll be time for feedback and review, and that will continue into the April 24th board work session.
So that being said, what's the purpose of doing anything for additional? Is that just for additional feedback?
Yes. And to follow the process of things come to the Finance Committee before it goes to the board.
Okay.
That's the way we did it last year.
Right, because we won't have a review of the budget today. They just moved it to the 10th.
We're in our process. We're not at the point where we can put firm dollar figures to the full budget. We still need to review capital. We've just finished our operational review. So when you see the budget presentation before April 10th, you will see the full detail.
Will the pre-read for the Finance Committee, will that be at least a day ahead of time? Because a lot of times I have a hard time if it gets sent out at like 10 a.m. I'm working all day, so I want to have a chance to read it ahead of time.
Could we get it out even before the full board package goes out in a separate? Would that be possible? The board package goes out on Friday before the meeting.
It goes out Friday.
That'd be great.
Would that be-
Have the weekend.
Okay, so we'll make sure that it's in the board package, if not sooner. How's that?
Yes.
Okay.
So Friday should be
next
doable.
next week is spring break for the school system. Mr. Covington, I just asked, he is going to be working that week. So our goal would be hopefully before Friday is to get you all the full new presentation with the detail and the budget supporting documents. That will probably be what I assume he's working on this week and all of next. So my goal would be before Friday even.
Well, thank you for working during your spring break.
It's typical in the budget
not-
season.
Yeah. It's that rush time of year.
Next, we want to look at these trends for our funding. And just to highlight a few things that our state number since 2015 through 2018 has grown by 4%, from 216 million to 224 million. Our county appropriation on that same time frame has grown 11% from 87.6 to 96.9. And our federal fund is pretty much flat through that same time period. Comparing our taxes to what actually the county gives us, if you look over a 10-year trend, the county's taxes has grown 57%, while our appropriation has grown only 37%. But if you look since 2015, the county's taxes has grown only 3%, while our appropriation has grown 11%. So they're giving us more of their tax.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Back on the previous slide, do we have any assumptions for what state is going to look like this year?
We have some assumptions for its retirement benefits, health benefits, and salary increases. But as far as all the categorical allotments, we haven't received a planning allotment from the state.
Okay, I'm just curious because we do have a new governor, and I don't know if policy is changing at all from one to the other on what funding looks like, or. Okay.
No. We were in a meeting last month at DPI, and they said we would not get a planning allotment. Next slide, just look at the student growth here in the county. This includes UCPS and charter schools. And since 2016 to 18, we've grown only 2%.
I just want to, as a reminder, when our county commissioners fund us locally, they're funding us based on Union County students, not just UCPS students. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. So this is the entire student enrollment for the county.
And I think some people looking at this chart will, well, I think you should note towards the end here, most recently, it's obvious that that growth is leveling off. And according to forecasts we have, that trend will continue, if not decrease, as well as our overall population in the county. So I know it looks like a steep climb, but if you're looking towards the most recent years, you see it leveling off.
That's correct. Since 2016, we've only grown 2% in the county for students.
In the county.
In the county,
charters.
Yes.
Do you have any idea what our charter payment's going to look, or not payment, our charter pass-through will be this year?
No, I did not look at that,
Growth-wise.
but I get it for you.
Okay. Because that's an item on our budget.
I will
And
say our
on
charter.
that, we had budgeted and then funded. Were we within, did we budget high on that pass through, or were we right in line? Do you happen to know for this past year?
For
For
last
the-
year or this
for-
current year?
For the current year.
We're on track for this
this
year.
7.3 million
Yeah.
or whatever it was. Okay.
So we're just going to use the same methodology for how we,
That's what
No,
I-
we'll
that
we'll
one
have
last
a
year.
projection that
Right.
we'll have probably an increase to that line for next year, because most of the growth in the county will be in charter schools.
We have what, 2 new charter schools coming online for the fall? Is Monroe coming online for this fall?
Yes.
Yes, Monroe and the Apprentice
The Apprentice Academy.
Apprenticeship
Right.
Academy.
And a private school in Waxhaw is going to come on. Like they had said they would be the fall of 18. Then they said they wouldn't. And last week they said now that they will be. But that's private, not charter.
So Dennis,
Different.
I'm in your process of making projections. I assume you stay in constant contact with all of the charter and private schools or not private,
Yes,
but all the
I've-
charter
I
schools.
call the largest ones that have our students, because we have a lot of charters that only has 1 or 2 of our students.
Mhm.
But the main ones here, I've called those guys to see what they think their projection is, and of course they're gonna stay high. Because with charter schools, I don't know if y'all know much about this registration process. You can register your child at every charter school, hoping to get into one of them, and they stay on their projection until the 20th day.
So is that after the school year starts, is it a monthly reporting type of thing where they have to report to you
Yes.
or the county their actual enrollment?
Yes. We
And
pay
then you're
them
paid.
based on their actual enrollment, and then come the end of the year, we do an average settle up, where you settle up total kids for Union County and the charter schools, and based on what you paid, we either owe them additional money or they owe us money.
Thank you.
Next slide, we made some funding assumptions based on what we've known so far from the county. From the state. The K-3 class size reduction will remain the same as the current year, meaning our class sizes would not decrease. They have sort of phased in that statute. They are going to give us a new allotment for enhancement teachers, and it's developed at a proposed allotment formula of 1 to every 191 students. We do know that the certified staff, meaning teachers and instructional support, principals, and AP salaries will increase based on their pay scale. All other employees, we were told at the meeting in February that we should use an average of 2%. And our health insurance is projected to go up 4% and retirement 9%. And this is the employer portion. On the local funding assumptions, we're going to make the assumption that the Board of County Commissioners will fund the state mandated salary and benefit cost increases. We're hoping they maintain our tax rate of 44.5% on the $100 valuation. And based on things that has been happening lately, we will hope they will fund school safety and security initiatives, which would be the superintendent's priorities, which lead us directly into his priorities. Sir.
So at a very high level, I wanted to let the Finance Committee know kind of where we are and highlight some key initiatives or funding requests under all three of these categories. The first one, the board and the public hopefully has heard kind of our leadership on and position on this idea of safety and security. We have talked with Sheriff Cathy. He has been working on a plan for expanding of school resource officers, particularly in elementary schools. We have a fantastic partnership with the sheriff's office, and he is committed to researching and exploring that as an option, because I do not believe that should be a budget request from our board or our school system. I think it needs to come from the sheriff's office. What we're focused on are wraparound services and resources to go to all clusters with regards to social and emotional learning. This idea of mental health and what we can do to be proactive to help our children that are in crisis. I had a principal tell me a couple of weeks ago, this issue has no zip code. This year, the board thankfully put resources into 6 of our neediest schools to help them with wraparound services, social workers, mental health therapists. The principals of those schools have all told me that is making significant difference in their ability to educate the children in those schools. And we kind of want to replicate that. So we're looking at a 3-year phase-in plan to address and provide schools and clusters with additional resources in the forms of school counselors, social workers, and mental health therapists. You all and the full board will receive a full proposal on this topic this week. By the end of this week, I will be sending you a document that will outline year by year, cost by cost, and resource distribution that will be based on an equitable distribution and not necessarily an equal distribution, because all of our schools, based on demographics and enrollments, have varying issues. Dr. Charles Faust is here. He has called in a social and emotional learning task force that has been working on this proposal. It's been composed of principals, social workers, psychologists, etc. And we're using a 3-year phase-in because I firmly don't believe that I can find enough people, qualified applicants for all of these jobs that might become available if the board wants to fund this. The total cost approximate per year would be about $1.6 million, again, over 3 years. And that would basically be for
1.6 a year
for 3 years. And that
by 1.6 every year.
Yes.
Yes.
And so that would be in the form of positions that would be assigned to schools and clusters, and also staff development. That would also in staff development for teachers. That would also include a lead counselor position Currently and historically, we've never had a lead counselor. We have 2 lead nurses, but we've never had a lead counselor, and that's really not helping our schools. We're also exploring the concept of a lead social worker. That would not be a new position, would be a stipend for a current social worker, highly effective one, to extend her, basically her contract for an extra month and a half during the summer to provide those services. We also are looking at what we need to do from a physical standpoint. Right now, in a handful of our schools, we have a visitor management system where when you go in, you show your license to the clerk. They scan it, run it through a background check system, and print out a visitor badge that you put with your location of where you're going.
Those have been paid by the PTOs
That
at
is
all those schools, or the boosters, or whoever. They've not been paid for by the school.
That is correct. But one of the requests that I'll be making to the board is to fund that piece for all of our schools. Right now, depending on which school you go to, you could go in and everyone might have a different check-in management system, and you could walk down the halls without any visitor's badge on. And I think from a safety standpoint, that would be a big one. And finally, in working with our facilities committee, we need to look at our physical plans. Some of our schools, when you walk up to the front door, there is a camera system that links to the front office clerk, and they have to physically buzz you in. Again, in some of our schools, not all of our schools. So Mark Strickland and our facility staff have been going site by site by site to see, are there any upgrades we need at schools? But again, that needs to come through our facilities committee and then back to finance. So those are going to be highlights of some big areas of focus on school safety and security. I'll pause there to see if you have any questions or comments.
As far as the new visitor recognition system, I'm just thinking out. I know my son's school does not have that, and I wonder, but it would be in the office because they're also an after-school site. So I'm wondering if it could be such that the after-school could use it as well when parents or someone come to pick up.
They currently don't use it for that in the
They don't.
schools that have it because they're in the office. So
Yeah.
because the after school's open till 6, the offices are
The office
already
is closed.
closed and secured for the evening.
But I do think, to your point, I talked with a handful of principals about this yesterday. That is an area that we need to look at and provide some recommendations to schools, because I do feel like that process of after school is a little bit loose.
You can always buy extra systems. Like the system that you get, if we're using the same ones that the schools currently have, you pay an upfront fee. You have to provide a computer,
Mhm.
and you buy the extra equipment that goes with it, and you buy the license, and then there's a license fee every year for the same thing. So you could have them in multiple places, and some schools actually have 2 or 3 of them sitting there if it's a high school or whatever. So there's
For different entry points.
no, all in the same place.
Just for the amount of people.
Oh,
for the
okay.
amount
Just
of
for the-
people
to
that
handle the
come
traffic.
through it, right?
Well, I know it again at my son's school. They installed a camera remote unlock, so you have to be recognized before they let you in the building. That is
No,
that
that's
standardized now?
No, that is one that I had mentioned that Mr. Strickland is
For after school, yeah.
Oh, no, that's not standardized.
Yeah. We've had it two years now, so that is not consistent.
It is not consistent.
Well, there's something maybe we ought to take a look at it, even if the
Well, maybe
visitor
maybe-
registration system is not.
And maybe we can
applicable yet.
partner with the after-school program too, to pay for parts of that
Yeah.
as well.
There's
Yeah, I think we need to.
Even though
Yeah, there's a
it's the same.
doorbell kind of
It's not the
thing, and
same.
yours is the same kind, and it has a camera too.
But not only is it just a visitor system, it's also a student checkout and check-in system that works with our school to tell if kids have come in tardy. It's a tardy system, a
Oh, I didn't know
checkout
that.
system. It does a whole lot of stuff. And they were working on some of the connectivity with Power School. I was looking for Jay,
It
sorry.
all-
And I'm not sure where it's come in, but it does all that. So you have some sort of idea of who's left early without having to manually enter it. And it helps the schools too. They used to have to, I don't know if this is still true, let central office know the volunteer hours at each school every year. So it logs volunteer hours as well.
Oh,
Yes, I think all of this would be a big benefit to all of our schools, but you're right. Some of the, and Ms. Heintel is correct that this has fundamentally been provided by PTOs or
Mhm.
boosters.
Wesley Chapel was the first one in Union County. Just had to say.
For the record. The second category is with regard to our employees. Mr. Covington mentioned that we know that we'll have some salary mandates by the state. We have also looked internally at our human resources department has begun working on compensation analysis and comp studies to see how our salaries and employees compare to the market. And I'll say to the public school market, not the private market. You're going to see an item coming before you that looks at our facility staff as priority number one in terms of bringing them up to market, because currently they are being underpaid, in my opinion. And so you'll see an item on the budget with regard to that. We've also, as you might remember, started a cohort at Wingate University where we are recruiting and hopefully going to be able to retain in two different cohorts. One are teacher assistants that are striving to become full-time teachers, which eventually will really help us with our K-3 class size issue. And the second one is a cohort of current teachers pursuing their masters to become licensed administrators. And Dr. Barnes in his budget has asked for some funding relief to help offset some of their tuition costs. So those are going to be some big asks in terms of human capital. And then the final one is around just kind of what are we doing around continuous improvement. The curriculum committee heard earlier in the year about a resource that Dr. Jones believes we need in our secondary schools to address dyslexia. I can't remember the name offhand. I think it's called Megaphonics,
MegaWords.
We also are really interested in possibly replicating the tutoring model that you have funded in 6 of our neediest schools, but really moving that model to 9th grade at Forest Hills High School and Monroe High School. Our 9th grade math scores in particular at those 2 schools, we need to do some work in that area, and that will be a request. We also found out, and I did not know this until we went through our budget process, and Dennis, you can help me on this. Our facilities department has asked for some backfill of funding for supplies and materials. Apparently, that department has not received any increases in funding since 2009. And there are implications for finishing out the school year in terms of service and what we're able to do in terms of funding allocation. And so Mr. Strickland has come forward with that request. The final kind of big one that you'll see is we're very much interested in automating our student transfer system. Right now, you have to print and complete a PDF form to do this. We've worked with a company, I can't remember their name, but to basically purchase a platform to help with everything in terms of grandfathering and student transfers and making all of that electronic, which would be kind of at a click of a button, much more easier to streamline than our current processes.
That would be school choice as well,
That would be school choice as well.
and the lottery.
And the
Would be
lottery.
automated.
It would be an automated lottery for all of our campuses like CATA or
CATA,
early
okay.
college.
Excellent.
We could run that centrally. So those are some big issues related to continuous improvement. And again, we haven't yet met with facilities to look at the capital budget. So all of that needs to be panned out as well.
That's going to be, we're going to start going through that on Thursday at our facilities meeting. So
Great. So my big message to the finance committee is we're still at about a 30,000 foot level. You're going to get 2 things. One thing this week, which will be a comprehensive plan around social emotional learning expansion, cluster by cluster. And then by next week, you'll receive the full budget in detail with supporting documents from Mr. Covington.
just a couple quick questions. We had talked before about a 504 IEP core person who's in charge of the guidance counselors overall. Is that anything you discussed in this year's budget?
We currently have a 504 compliance person, and that's Dr. Gravely. She is over 504 compliance. What we have put into the budget is a lead counselor position, and that is to help someone to help. Now, to be honest with you, we put in one lead counselor as part of this social emotional plan. I'd love to eventually have, and this can be part of the 3-year, one lead counselor for all 53 schools might not be enough. But we want to start with at least one
Would be a
lead,
start.
one lead counselor, and that might be for high schools. And then maybe the next year, a lead counselor for, elementary or middle. But
Right.
that would be a phase-in approach.
It all goes to the fact that our counselors are kind of overwhelmed, and the IEPs and 504s fall on one of them at each school. And I think it would just be good
That is
if they
correct.
had an actual resource to go to all the time to get some answers on 504s and IEPs.
That is correct. It is a gap in our system that we're trying to address, and believe me, your counselors and principals will be very thankful if we can
Okay.
get that approved.
And we'll also then be able to discuss on the 10th, like new positions, where we are from last year, those kind of things as well. Where you're recommending raises to, other than facilities, if there are any, that kind of stuff. Okay.
Correct.
One more question. What's our run rate this year? How are we doing on last year's budget from a local perspective than anywhere else? Like, are we ahead, behind? Where are we? Or do you want to wait till 10 to get there?
As of end of February, we have spent roughly 6% of the budget. So they're trending well. Be ahead of the ship. As of February, end of February, in the documents that I sent you guys, we spent 66% of the county funding, which is on track with where we should be at that time period in the year.
So that's it for me. And again, you're going to get further detail this week and next.
Okay, we'll move on to school safety, elementary SROs, enhanced school safety, additional cameras, visitors, entry systems. Also Dennis.
Didn't we just talk about that?
Was
Are we talking more
was that
about-
entailed in the last item?
No, sir. No,
Oh.
sir. That was the item you had me to add to the agenda.
Oh, but Drew just took care of it.
Right,
Wow.
on the
Right.
specifics.
I do have one question. We're talking, while I get that the SROs or additional SROs are out of the sheriff's budget, not out of our budget, but we're having it's a joint request, correct?
Funny, you should use the word joint. That's exactly what I wanted to
I mean,
address in this, is to have a joint meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Short answer is yes.
Okay,
It is a partnership effort where I have informed the sheriff's office. I as superintendent will support his plan. And he has said the same to me. And so, to be honest with you, if we have a joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners, I'd love on this section of the budget for it to be a joint discussion with the sheriff present, if
agree.
possible.
but I'd like to see what the sheriff is recommending for us.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd
And I've
love
Prior to that
to
meeting.
get something on the books soon because
I've asked Mr. McCraw to talk with the sheriff. He's meeting with him this week to look at
Okay.
their plan and vice versa.
Okay,
So that's kind of where we are. I know there is a joint county commissioner BOE meeting scheduled for sometime during the week of April 23rd. County manager has that date. She's run that by her chair, and I'm waiting to hear, is there a particular date that week that would work for them and for our board, obviously.
I just want to make sure that we're kind of part of the process with the sheriffs too, and understanding his recommendation from that standpoint. If it's not
Yes.
every elementary school, what is it? Where are we moving?
We're
And
also
we're on
having
board.
conversations with municipalities, like the town of Waxhaw,
Waxhaw.
the town of Stallings, Marshville, et cetera, on
Blanket.
this topic. Today, I have a meeting with Chief Gilliard with Monroe
In
PD.
Monroe as
Right.
well. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's important to include Monroe in the process, since they supply their city officers.
And they have, in Monroe schools, there's an SRO at each elementary, or rotates?
They
It rotates. I believe her name is Officer Holt. She rotates primarily from Benton Heights East and Walter Bickett. Those are her three primary elementary schools that she rotates and spends days at, or and vice versa.
So when we look to budget school safety, so the additional SROs that we're going to request, is that coming through our budget or is that something the sheriff will fund?
That would come from a request from the sheriff's office.
It's not a pass through or anything, not an
the
allocation.
current SROs are in his budget,
Okay.
not ours.
Okay, so the only additional would be the social and emotional support.
It'd be the social emotional support and then whatever we want to do on the physical
Physical
plans to
right.
upgrade with the visitor management and any kind of the
Okay.
camera key access.
But it's all the county budget.
Right, but it's our line or.
Right, it's our line.
Yep.
Yep.
So we'll be provided more feedback on setting up a date for a joint meeting with the county, the commissioners, and the sheriff. And that request has already been made.
With the, if they leave our tax rate alone at 4451, and do you have any idea what the tax base looks like and what our fiscal 19 budget number would approximate?
About 115 million.
And that's without the true up funds.
Correct.
And
for
that's
this year,
up
which
from,
is 3.14,
Yes.
and that's up from 112 last year.
Yes. It's about a 5 point something growth, including the true up.
any other questions? All right, we'll move on to item 6, school nutrition services, small equipment bid.
By statute, we have to bring to the board to get the approval of the small equipment bids and purchases for child nutrition. So I sent you all a copy of that bid.
And is that at the 125,610.39 budgeted? Okay.
Yes.
Then I make a
And what?
motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the bid.
Have a motion, need a second.
Second?
Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. It is approved. We reported to, it is recommended to be, it is sent to the board to be recommended to be approved on the board. Toshiba contract extension. Mr. Covington?
When I first arrived here, one of the major issues that was put before me was that our service level and the downtime of our copiers at our schools and in the district was in array. So I've talked with the Toshiba people and we've come up with a plan to where we are going to fix this problem by they're going to install brand new copier machines in all our schools and facilities. And I negotiate a rate where we get per copier pricing closer to what they give to our neighboring large county, since I was part of that negotiation as well. And so we're going to extend their contract by 2 years and lock in those prices. And we did contact Staples and Rico to see if our pricing was at market, and they could even meet our current price. So with us dropping it even more, we feel this is a very valid contract.
This does not require bids,
No, that's not. It's a service contract.
service contract. Okay.
And so you are billed on a per copy, whether it's
Yes.
black and white or color.
Yes.
How often do they bill us?
Monthly.
Monthly.
Our previous contract had us tied to that we had to have a certain number of copies. I also removed that from the contract.
Great.
So it's based on what we actually use.
And is this funded through administration or something and does not have to go through SPIT and technology?
No.
Is that, it's just
It's
how
just a
it's on
service
the budget?
contract, right?
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I make a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the Toshiba contract extension.
I
For a
second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Would be so recommended. Item 8, audit contract and engagement letter.
Also, by statute, we have to bring forth the audit contract to you guys annually. And we are recommending that we stay with Anderson, Smith and White for the audit work for the end of this current year.
We approved them back last year, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not like August or something, right?
Right.
Okay.
And they did a much better job presenting this past year than the previous.
I had lots of conversation with them about that.
We got that
Is
worked
this
out.
something that for next year, we look at other do we ever look at, I'm not saying anything's wrong with them, but do we look at other firms?
You can put an RFP out there if you like. Most districts try to stay with the same ones. But you can put an RFP out to see if someone else would like to bid on the job.
How long have they done our audit? Do you know? I know it preceded you.
About 6 years.
Have you used them in your previous role or?
No.
You had a
No,
different?
they have a
No.
different firm at Siemens.
We have this company does a lot of the small counties within the state. Wake and Charlotte Mecklenburg use a different one due to volume.
We're probably their largest
Yes.
school system.
Yes.
They did a little-
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll entertain a motion to recommend to the full board.
Make a motion to recommend to the full board?
All right, have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it will be so recommended. Item 9, SEC Consulting Review Checklist. Dennis, could you give a little background about where this came from and how it got to this point?
We brought in the school efficiency consultants to look at internal controls and processes and procedures within finance, HR, and risk management. And based on their, I think it was like a 2-month evaluation and study, they left us with some recommendations of things we should look at. And they provided that in an executive summary, which I provided to you guys. And you'll see in blue an update as to what we've done with their recommendations.
So as a reminder, the Finance Committee, I believe, had asked for a monthly update on this to see, what actions are being taken. So I think this is the first time Mr. Covington has brought this back for your
Yes.
your review or questions.
All right. Please, go right ahead.
So we put in a frontline central application. That's a lot of the answers to a lot of places. Explain that to me. Do you mind?
It's a process where we take applicants from the application process, and when they are hired, to where there's only one data input through that whole process, instead of before HR had to put data in, and then once the person got the job, it claims to finance, and we had to put data in. But you
Okay.
put it in on the front end, and
So
it follows through if the person gets hired.
It's a new system or it's a new software? Or
It's a new software.
And it's fully implemented?
We are
We are. Awesome. Okay. And does that go?
we are testing it right
Does that
now.
go through
Okay.
salary? Does that stay with them through their term, or is it only a hiring application? So are all of our employees in there and their salaries and all that kind of stuff, or is this just a hiring system?
I think it's just a hiring system,
Okay.
but I have to talk with Dr. Barnes on that.
Okay. What? It's just a hiring system?
I think it's
Okay.
just a hiring system and process, but we can check.
The other question that I had was an internal auditor position. Have you put that in your budget for next year?
Not as a position. We're looking at doing some other reorganization of duties and hopefully be able to take care of that requirement without
That's
adding a
something
person.
Kind of important to have, so.
Yes.
Okay.
So you think that might be promoted from within?
I haven't took the reorg to the superintendent that I would like
Okay.
to put in
Okay.
place.
All
I'm
right,
just
so that-
asking, so we
That's
won't
still
go
in
there.
the works.
I just
Okay.
want to make sure there's some
All right.
plan for,
Yeah.
and when, so do you think this internal audit position will be up and running next fiscal year? Or hopefully?
We
In place.
will be doing some internal audits next year.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I don't think we're gonna get to every school every
Right.
year, but we
Right.
will be auditing schools.
Just
Okay.
something to start would be awesome, right?
Yeah.
We're all about just getting to the starting
Just getting
point.
to the starting point, and I'm happy with that. So going back to the Frontline Central, maybe you can have Dr. Barnes answer this at the next. It's going to be a timekeeping software too. I thought I read something about it, and I just remembered where I circled it. Overtime, where they talk about the overtime and timekeeping processes are all manual, and it says timekeeping software is included in the Frontline Central application. So I assume at some point we'll go to that or whatever, but if he could give us an update on that, I would appreciate that. The other thing that I have is what Gary, you and I were talking about before the meeting is risk management. I would love for the board to hear from our risk manager. Just from a top of the tree standpoint, what are the biggest risks to the organization? Not current risks as far as lawsuits and and claims, worker comp claims and those kind of things. But like you would see at a public company when they're giving you your possible risks for the coming years, would be nice to hear that from our risk management. And it's great that our worker comp claims have gone down. So that's a huge thing.
So
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Oh, it's open.
Open.
It's open session.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe she
and
could.
I will say, just sorry to cut you off, that for what it's worth, and this individual, her name is Sarah. She reports directly to Michelle, and she does a very good job at her job. So we'll be glad maybe at the, I don't know if we can put it on the agenda for April 10th, but maybe at another finance committee
Right.
meeting, she can
The
come
next
and be
one.
on that agenda.
Right.
us an
And if it
update.
needs to be more top of the trees because of legal reasons or whatever, that's fine. But just to have something, because the very last thing is the district should develop a business continuity plan that consists of critical district information in order to maintain functional operations during an unplanned major event. I've never heard anything about that. So that kind of stuff is really good too.
Yeah,
That was all my questions.
a
Sorry.
major disaster plan. I want to second Kathy's comments. I do know that Sarah has more than pays for herself in the reduction in workers' compensation claims. Being self-insured, it's really comes out of our wallet when we have those claims. So having someone be able to manage those closely is important. I would also like to know the progress on the unplanned major event planning, if you will. I hope we are not only a natural disaster, but a unnatural disaster, such as
Very natural.
unfortunately other schools around the country have experienced from a violence standpoint, that we have a major plan in place, and that's coordinated with all our municipalities, the sheriff's office, any other, do they still have the emergency person at the
That's
county?
not what this is. That's not
No.
what this is.
Well,
You're
I
talking about
think-
emergency services. and
I think that should be, any emergency plan is going to take into account a natural disaster and interruption of some kind. And that needs to be part of an overall emergency plan.
I think the emergency plan, I may be wrong, but the emergency plan you're speaking of, I believe would fall under the jurisdiction of someone like a Jared McCraw in terms of a natural disaster. What is our safety plan if we have an issue? I think what this was
This is
referring
different.
to was more so on the technology end.
Okay.
And so I didn't say this earlier, but one of the things we've discussed about the budget for next year, and I believe, Joe, this has come up in Leslie in the SPIT committee,
disaster.
is disaster recovery. We've got to
Okay.
put something in and probably in our capital budget on disaster recovery and server recovery, both on-site and off-site. And so that is going to be something we have got to do to shore up. Hasn't that come up?
Yeah, and I know we have a line for that because we've made reference to it in the past meeting. So yeah, it's worth looking at.
Now, who did I see in the news recently, the past day or two? Another county municipality is being
think
held.
Atlanta.
ransom.
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's being
Atlanta.
held ransom for 50 grand. And now they're reduced to using paper for everything. I can imagine how that has crippled a municipality.
Yeah,
What
Mecklenburg
would you
went
do
through
us?
that
They
3 or
went through
4
that
months
too,
ago.
Yeah.
Somebody put a malware in there.
So
System.
that is more what this item is looking to address.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for anyone on the status? Okay. Hearing not, we'll
Oh,
move
wait,
on.
I have a question. Are we going to get quarterly updates on this, or how do we?
On the open items?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Quarterly? Is that
Yes.
what we decided? Okay.
And could I make a suggestion that on the open items that, for instance, addition of an internal auditor position, could you put some kind of estimate of time frame when those items will be completed or estimated to be addressed? So we have kind of a timeline for unfinished items?
Yes, sir.
Great. Any other questions on this item? All right. Number 10, budget status report.
At the request of the committee, that we send over our status as expenditures to budget on a monthly basis, and I provided that to you guys. And as far as the county budget, like I said earlier, we are on track with spending the county dollars in line with our budget. And the state money, I need to let you know that like in our major categories, those are estimates. We get funded by positions. So the dollars doesn't really matter. We just try to make sure we keep enough loaded in the budget to cover all of those expenditures.
So in reviewing over this, any surprises, anything to bring to note? You're talking about we're on track where we should be with our local funds expenditures, and anything that we should give
That's-
special attention to
No,
in
sir.
your estimation?
No,
Thank
sir.
you. Any other questions? Hearing not, we'll move on to item 11, next meeting and adjusted timeline. As mentioned earlier, what I'd like to do is amend the timeline for a 5 o'clock finance meeting, April 10th, prior to the next board meeting. And then as called, as date is set, the week of April 23rd, we will have a joint meeting with the county and the sheriff and any other parties we feel necessary, such as from the city of Monroe. And then the April 24th, a full board work session on the budget. Anticipation of approving our budget to be submitted to the county on the May 1st board meeting. So I will make those, that request of adjustment of our timeline. Is there any questions or comments? Okay. Can I get a motion to make those adjustments to the,
Motion to
Timeline.
make the recommended adjustments to the timeline?
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That would be so recommended. Okay.
Question,
Yes, sir.
on that April 24th, are we gonna still try to do that at the regular finance meeting scheduled time, 8 in the morning?
Work session. I'll get with the board chair and get back with you.
And then you're going to get back with us on when the Board of County Commissioners can meet as well.
Right. And that joint meeting.
Thank
firm
you.
Date to that week. So we'll get back on those two, give you plenty of notice. Any other items to come before the committee? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned.